NGOs, they play a very important part. And why? Because they sustain communities. The unions know what's happening with their members, who they normally represent the public service. We have about 13 unions. I heard you all have just one, the teachers union, yeah? Labor, but oh, no, this is what I found interesting. You know, why I did not look that St. Kitts could have had any problems? Guess why I was fooled by this whole thing? When I heard that the government came out of a Labour Party, I said, well, they're good to go in St. Kitts. One country less to ever worry about the St. Kitts Nevis. Because St. Kitts Nevis is led by a Labour Party and enshrined in the concept and the constitution of Labour is about the people at the bottom. So I don't understand, how could we have a system now where we have a leader of a Labour Party, a government under a Labour Party, that is just simply not in touch with anything when it comes to this land acquisition confusion I'm reading about. I'm hearing all this thing. Marriott came in without the sensitivity of the preservation of the local hotels. How could this happen under Labour? You see what I'm talking about? They abandoned the founding principles of their own party to take on all this other kind of dynamic concept that they believe development is. They think development, believe you me, they really feel. In Trinidad we have now a group that's talking about building a highway. Oh yes, a small country, you're going to build a highway costing 1.2 billion US, not million, billion US. When 70% of your citizens don't have water every day. They have water once a week, in some communities, twice a week. My secretary has twice a week. She has to go home early. I tell her, go home early on Tuesday, because Tuesday and Saturday are her 2 days. No, I tell her, because I have to respect this. I live in a certain environment where I have water every day, all night. That is those of us at the top have that benefit. But 70% don't have water every day. But you could build a highway in a small country where it takes from one end to the next 1 hour at max to get to, and you need to build a highway. You know what? That is all about what show and tell. Look at our highway. Look at the Hyatt we just built. And this is what they define. In a ground-up system, development is people. It's about people sustainability, gross domestic peace and gross domestic happiness and gross domestic family sustainability is just as important as gross domestic product in a ground-up country. These are some of the differences. And what I did, in my book, I looked at a chart showing in one of the appendices, a top-down on one side, bottom-up in every ministry, education, health, housing, tourism, showing the differences. And the differences are so startlingly clear to people when they hear it. Our corporations, for instance, you know, I often ask my colleagues in the business world, is there an end point to the quest and the thirst for profit? Isn't there a responsibility, social corporate responsibility that you have where you adopt communities or you adopt schools and make sure they strive well? What is do you need 1,000% profit? Could you work with 500%? I mean, these are things that you have to wonder. They celebrate their success at the end of the year. And their communities next to them are in abject poverty. How could you sit and feel comfortable with this disparity that exists between those at the top and the many in the middle and the bottom? How could you feel good as a leader that you are proud of a highway and these things? Where is the social consciousness of our leaders? And this is why I'm saying, when now our young people begin to ask, where is in it for me? And you start to see the rage in them, in the way they drive. We have not just murder, we are averaging now a murder and a half roughly, sometimes 2 a day. This is high for Trinidad. Remember, Jamaica was always with those thousands a year. We are now 500 roughly a year now. And I heard you all have had some numbers too. I heard even Nevis that didn't have much of anything. You see him crying and so. But if you live with uncertainty, which is what our youngsters are living with, uncertainty, if not addressed, leads to anxiety. This is the psychological part of me explained. Anxiety, if not addressed, leads to frustration. And if frustration is not addressed, it leads to anger. Anger is manifested in two ways. Either you turn your anger inward onto you and become depressed, which means, in its extreme, suicide, or you turn your anger outward, aggression or homicide. And so when you have people living where they don't know when they're going to get paid and if they're going to get the job, and 2 weeks on and 2 weeks off, it's a constant state of anxiety and stress that we are under with this kind of decision-making policy leaders that we are dealing with. So this is where it comes in now. In a ground bottom-up model, this is the kind of issues that we have to look at. More and more, the changes have to come in all of the areas. The media, I said that already, will have to go through a tremendous transformation. But I want to say here to the youngsters at the university and elsewhere that you have to pay homage to your leaders of today and yesterday. You don't have to be disrespectful and bitter. I am not really. I may sometimes feel frustrated with what is happening because I think we didn't have to be where we are. But you have to also tell them thank you. But you have to step up now. And you have to actually begin to look at how the transformation can happen in all the areas. Something as simple as dealing with crime home, they're talking about a military approach, which is a top-down approach, understandably so. Our colonial rulers were not into no social coddling of the people. It was about, hey, you didn't listen, you go to jail, chop you up, whatever is the penalty, and it rolled on. We have now national security ministers who are talking about bringing back capital punishment, talking about total military. So now we have, if you go, many years ago in Jamaica, when you walk on the streets, you saw people with their guns just walking in the regular day on the street, the police and they with their guns. Now Trinidad is like that. You walk into the city and you see that, a total military approach, because they don't have the political will to be disciplined enough to understand that if you invest in the social transformational part of it, you will be getting rid of the problem as opposed to the symptom, which is what the military approach does. And let me tell you, this entire model I'm talking about is not a socialist model. Some people are trying to intimidate people who, she talking socialism and check, watch her, No. I had to clear that up. I went through all the media and made that clear. We're talking expanding capitalism to benefit the poor and the middle class also. Why is it capitalist practices and so on only benefit those at the top? Why is it the big boys and girls now could invest in, they get the ability to bid for every and any contract, large, middle, medium, small. We should limit the big boys to invest in the big contracts and so on, and the medium and small businesses, they get the contracts in the small and medium. And if we do that, you know what's going to happen? The wealth is going to be shared. When you leave it up to the big guys who get all the contracts, because they have about 10 companies within their big company that they could bid for all kinds of contracts under different company names, all within one gun. You know the story. So when they are allowed to do that, they trickle down the wealth as they very well please. A government must ensure that all of its citizens could share in the wealth of the nation. So this model, with the exception of the right to recall MPs who not performing and so on, which requires constitutional reform, the only part of the model that requires constitutional reform is that part, the right to recall. But other than that, and you don't even have to put it if countries don't want to have it. I just think people need to serve where they were hired and elected to do, but notwithstanding that. The rest of the changes I'm talking about just requires the political will to do it. It does not require any major changes to take place. So therefore, why can't it be done? What is the legitimate reason that it cannot be done? It's because it's not going to benefit those at the top. If it is, we can empower those at the bottom and in the middle. So in summary, this is what we are faced with. And so when I say to you young people, it is your time. You have to now coalesce. Remember, many years ago, I remember in Trinidad we had something called the Black Power movement back then. I was somewhere in elementary school, and they had this movement, was led by university students. I'm not inciting anyone, don't start thinking I'm being seditious. I heard they said at home, Dr. Gopaul, you're being seditious. How am I being seditious? First of all, I am giving you the benefit of my experience and expertise in the social areas. And I'm not even charging you what I will charge people in the US when I have to do this, which is over 2,000 US a day. And you telling me that I am seditious, you should be paying me. I'm giving my services for free. This is how I had to get them off my back. You should be thanking me. But no, you being seditious and trying to incite. But it was the young people who changed that in 1970 from the university. You guys have to get together and look at, we're not talking about a political revolution, We're talking about a philosophical revolution from a top down to a ground bottom up with any of our leaders. So you almost have to have a checklist, the chart. Do they believe in this? You're questioning them now. Remember, you're not letting them, you're going to elect your MPs now on the basis of could they deliver what you need? And that's what it's coming down to. So with that new philosophy, it's a lot of excitement that's going to happen when you start to see the wealth of a nation being shared, when you start to see people living with a tremendous amount of respect and feeling that they know now that their value in the society is just as important as those who are very so-called academically oriented. When you start to value ethics. The other day I said, remember when A.N.R. Robinson Home, our former president, he was prime minister and president, and he chose one party over the next when there was a split. Did you all remember that period? That was in 2000, around there, 2001, yeah. He had felt, when he looked at the incumbent UNC versus the opposition PNM, he felt that this was the words he used when he made his choice with the 18-18 split to let one party get it over the other for the year until election was called a year later again. We had a one-point election every year, 2000, 2001, and 2002. You could well imagine the stress that people went through. But you know what he used as his words? He chose from the preamble of our Constitution, which says, moral, ethical, and spiritual values. He chose the opposition. And he was against the PNM for his entire practically adult life. Since in the days of Dr. Williams, he had moved out of the PNM. But his experience with the UNC incumbent showed him that this is a problem where morals and ethics he was not seen. However, he never explained it, He just simply said this was his reason. He never told us, gave us examples. He's older now and a little memory problems, so we can't even get to know what was the specific examples that he saw where ethics and morals were compromised. But now that they are in government, you're seeing some of it, and you're saying, up close and personal, he understood that. Ethics is an important part of a child's development. We called it when we were growing up. We all understood the concept of ethics and right and wrong and morals. Our parents and our teachers and our religious leaders who usually define the institution of morality, and so you see it in the religious institutions. All of them were consistent. The other day when I raised this issue, well, Jack Warner, you already know that name. He said, what is ethical for you may not be ethical for me. I said, well, I know that, but, I know that, clearly. We all know that now in the curriculum. Guess what? Why can't we have ethics defined in our children's experiences? This helps you, believe you me. That's the one thing I love about psychology. This I'm telling you now, is a clear difference between law and psychology. My husband is an attorney, and we always have these discussions. You know, in psychology, we could lose our license as psychologists if we engage in unethical conduct, because ethics is what defines our discipline more so than anything else. So if for instance, like when Bill Clinton got involved with his intern, that was unethical. She was his intern. But it wasn't illegal. She was over 21. Nothing could have happened to him legally. You know, if he was a psychologist, he would have lost his license because he went with his intern. I say that to say, you see how important and embedded the concept of ethics is for us in this discipline? Should be important for all of our young people and all of our citizens to understand. We're not trying to be a moral compass in an extreme sense, but we got to understand what that helps keep you grounded. And so all of that is what brings into the forefront in a ground-up model. I look forward to when we start doing trainings when the book comes out throughout the region where people can get more detailed all-day trainings and so. I did some of that in Barbados the other day when I was here for 10 days, and we really did the all-day kind of trainings more so than lectures. And it's just great when you can choose a form of governing for your people that everyone can feel part of the process. And in that vein, I'd like to end my discourse and open for questions and comments from anyone.